Göbekli Tepe mystery, finally solved. In 2025, and it's not what you think. In 2025, history trembled. Beneath the hills of southeastern Turkey, a startling archaeological discovery rewrote our understanding of civilization's origins. Göbekli Tepe, an already enigmatic site older than the pyramids, yielded a hidden vault filled with advanced artifacts and cryptic writings. But among them was one item so controversial, its details remain classified. Why was a place built over 12,000 years ago deliberately buried? And what truth lies beneath its sculpted stones and symmetrical geometry? What researchers uncovered may reveal not the birth of civilization, but echoes of something far older. Subscribe to the UFO Universe channel for more jaw-dropping discoveries that challenge everything we thought we knew about human history. Don't miss what they don't want you to find out. Before diving into the discoveries of 2025, let's go back to the origins of this enigma. Göbekli Tepe's tale isn't just ancient, it's downright peculiar. The deeper you explore, the more questions arise. Nestled in the arid hills of southeastern Turkey, near the Syrian border, lies a site so ancient and enigmatic that it's quietly transforming our understanding of early civilization. This isn't the kind of landmark you'd find in a typical history textbook or a bustling tourist destination filled with souvenirs and cameras. Yet, archaeologists regard it as one of the most groundbreaking discoveries in human history. Göbekli Tepe, meaning potbelly hill in Turkish, is considered the oldest known monumental structure on the planet. It dates back over 11,000 years, somewhere between 10,000 and 13,000 BCE, predating the Egyptian pyramids, Stonehenge, and even the advent of agriculture. Here's where it becomes even more fascinating. Only about 10% of Göbekli Tepe has been excavated. The remaining sections lie buried beneath layers of earth, waiting to be uncovered. If the findings so far are any sign, each new discovery only deepens the mystery of this ancient site. Significant discoveries began in the 1990s when German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt re-examined what was once dismissed as a simple mound. What he uncovered challenged conventional history. He revealed massive T-shaped stone pillars, some towering nearly 20 feet high and weighing up to 10 tons, arranged in expansive circular formations. These weren't ordinary stones. Each was intricately carved with depictions of animals, symbols, and enigmatic humanoid figures. Snakes coil along the surfaces, while foxes, vultures, and scorpions appear repeatedly. Some even believe these carvings represent the earliest attempts at expressing mythological or spiritual concepts. However, there was no evidence of writing, wheels, metal tools, or domesticated animals. These were hunter-gatherers, people traditionally thought too primitive to organize such monumental construction. So, how did they achieve this? And, perhaps more intriguingly, why? The most widely supported theory suggests that Göbekli Tepe served as a ceremonial or religious site, often referred to as the world's first temple. It is believed that various groups of nomadic people may have gathered there for rituals, possibly for seasonal festivals, funerals, or other spiritual events. However, this raises several questions. Why would people go to such great lengths, carving and transporting massive stones, solely for ceremonial purposes? And how did they manage to collaborate on such a large-scale project without a central authority or even the agricultural infrastructure to sustain a large population? Klaus Schmidt proposed an intriguing idea. He theorized that sites like Göbekli Tepe were not built after the advent of agriculture, but may have actually been the catalyst for its development. Imagine it this way: a large group of people gathers for a sacred event. They require food, shelter, and a purpose to remain together. Over time, this necessity might have driven them to sow seeds, construct storage facilities, and eventually establish permanent settlements. In essence, religion or ritual could have been the catalyst for agriculture, rather than the other way around. Adding to the mystery is the fact that the site was intentionally buried. Around 8000 BCE, someone, or perhaps many individuals, made the decision to cover it completely. They didn't simply abandon it and let nature take over. They actively concealed it. To this day, the reason remains unknown. Was it a ritual closure, a cultural transition, or did something occur that compelled them to erase their own legacy? What is clear is that Göbekli Tepe challenges our understanding of early humans. These were not aimless wanderers scraping by in caves. They were organized, inventive, and capable of remarkable engineering, all before the advent of writing or metal tools. Nevertheless, despite its significance, Göbekli Tepe is still cloaked in mystery. The more we uncover, the more it pushes us to question everything we thought we knew about our origins. So we've explored the stones and dust of Göbekli Tepe's ancient past, but deeper questions remain unanswered. What does it all signify? That's where the real puzzle begins, as everyone from scientists to storytellers has their own interpretation. Scholars, for instance, view the site as a religious hub, a place for rituals, ceremonies, or seasonal gatherings. Yet, here's the intriguing part. There's little evidence of permanent habitation. No houses, no fire pits, no trash dumps. It seems people journeyed great distances to gather at this site, carried out their activities, and then departed. This challenges conventional thinking because large monuments are typically built after agriculture develops, as stable food supplies are needed to sustain such labor-intensive projects. Göbekli Tepe, however, hints that shared beliefs may have united people first, with farming emerging later. That's the grounded perspective, but there's also a more speculative, colourful theory to consider. Some suggest that Göbekli Tepe was constructed with assistance from ancient extraterrestrials. Yes, really. They claim the precision and scale of the construction would have been impossible for Stone Age humans without some kind of outside intervention. Others believe it serves as evidence of a highly advanced civilization that was obliterated by a catastrophic event and subsequently forgotten by history. While these theories lack substantial evidence, they've certainly captured public fascination. A big reason these fringe ideas persist is the lingering mystery surrounding the site. Much of it remains unexcavated, and as potentially the oldest monumental complex on Earth, it leaves us with countless unanswered questions. One particularly puzzling aspect is why the site was deliberately buried. Archaeologists believe the people who used Göbekli Tepe intentionally covered it with dirt and debris. This is highly unusual in ancient history, where sites are typically abandoned and left to deteriorate naturally. But in this case, it seems like they purposefully concealed it, and no one really knows why. When science lacks definitive answers, myths often fill the gap. Fringe theorists describe the site as a gateway, an ancient star map, or even a coded message left by a lost civilization. The internet buzzes with theories about ancient technology, energy grids, and ties to Atlantis. Naturally, the media thrives on such intrigue. This isn't always negative. Outlandish theories draw attention to the site, boosting interest and funding for archaeological studies. However, they also blur the line between evidence-based research and pure entertainment. Here's where it gets intriguing. What if all these theories are wrong? What if mainstream interpretations are overlooking something crucial? And what if these myths, despite their exaggerations, hint at a genuine mystery we've yet to fully comprehend? This is the enigma surrounding Göbekli Tepe. We have tangible evidence, expert analyses, wild conjectures, and countless unanswered questions. Yet, despite everything we've uncovered and haven't, the site largely remains an enigma. But as the old debates continue to swirl, something subtle has begun to change. In 2025, fresh discoveries emerged that are reshaping our entire understanding of what Göbekli Tepe truly was and what it wasn't. The breakthrough of 2025 marked a turning point. At the beginning of that year, something occurred at the site that caught everyone off guard. For decades, archaeologists and historians had puzzled over the stone rings and iconic T-shaped pillars, widely interpreting them as part of a ceremonial site created by nomadic hunter-gatherers. The general belief was that people visited this place temporarily for rituals, not that anyone actually lived there. But then, during the start of a new excavation season, a team working along the perimeter of the already revealed structures uncovered something that defied expectations: evidence of permanent habitation. This wasn't just a few misplaced rocks or indistinct soil patterns. It included hearths for cooking, storage pits for food, and foundational layouts, clear indicators that people had not only visited Göbekli Tepe but had stayed there, lived there, and possibly built a community around it. A series of flat, smoothed areas appeared to have been used as workspaces, sparking immediate excitement and disbelief. Until now, there had been no definitive evidence that the builders of Göbekli Tepe had actually lived at the site. It was widely believed that, due to the absence of signs of farming, housing, or long-term habitation, the area functioned more as a sacred stopover, a spiritual waypoint along ancient migration routes. However, what began to emerge in 2025 didn't resemble anything temporary. The living spaces were just the beginning of the surprises. Archaeologists also discovered tools such as stone blades, scrapers, grinding stones, and traces of plants and animals. Evidence like wheatgrasses, legumes, gazelle bones, and bird feathers suggested that people not only prepared food here, but processed it in ways indicative of a more settled lifestyle. Grinding stones point to evidence of food preparation, suggesting an extended stay rather than a temporary camp. In essence, this wasn't just a stopover, it was a home. This notion alone challenges long-held beliefs about human history. If Göbekli Tepe truly supported a permanent or semi-permanent population, it would alter the timeline for when humans began settling in one place and transitioning from nomadic groups to organized communities, and that's only part of the groundbreaking discovery in 2025. As researchers expanded their efforts beyond the initial excavation sites, ground-penetrating radar unveiled something astonishing. At least 15 additional enclosures remained buried beneath the surface, mostly untouched. Some of these structures could predate the ones already unearthed, possibly reaching back 15,000 years. This places them in a period far before the advent of domesticated crops or metal tools, during an era when much of humanity still lived in caves or open plains. The sheer magnitude of this revelation is awe-inspiring. To date, more than 200 newly identified standing stones have been uncovered, massive, carefully shaped, and meticulously positioned slabs. These are not random rocks, but intentionally constructed monuments, with many arranged in circular or oval formations resembling earlier designs. Altogether, researchers have now confirmed at least 15 additional megalithic temples within the broader area, and the reality is, we've barely begun to explore its depths. Less than 10% of Göbekli Tepe has been fully excavated so far. The majority of the site remains buried, preserved beneath layers of history, awaiting discovery, a process that could take over 150 years to complete. It's no exaggeration to say that every shovelful of earth could unveil a groundbreaking revelation. The breakthrough in 2025 didn't merely add a few details to Göbekli Tepe's story. It fundamentally transformed our understanding of it. For years, the site was defined by assumptions that it was solely a temple complex, that its builders were nomadic, and that it wasn't a place of permanent settlement. Now, all of that has changed. Evidence of daily life, tools, food remnants, and the sheer number of hidden structures suggest a level of sophistication far beyond what was previously believed possible for people of that era. What we're examining might not only be the oldest monumental site on Earth, but also among the earliest known communities, established long before we thought such a feat was possible. And if that's the case, what other assumptions might we have gotten wrong? These discoveries didn't simply fill in historical gaps, they unveiled an entirely unexpected chapter. So, let's pause for a moment and truly consider what's unfolding here. For years, archaeologists believed Göbekli Tepe served primarily as a spiritual site, a kind of ancient pilgrimage destination. Essentially, a gathering place where small groups of hunter-gatherers would come together to worship, perform rituals, and then disperse. That narrative held up for a time. After all, the site lacked clear evidence of permanent habitation, no homes, streets, or kitchens, just massive stone pillars adorned with carvings of animals and abstract symbols. But everything began to change after the groundbreaking discoveries in 2025. What researchers found didn't just tweak a few historical details, it redefined the story entirely. This wasn't merely a transient gathering spot. Increasingly, it appears that some people actually live there, and that's where things start to get truly fascinating. If Göbekli Tepe was more than just a ceremonial site, if it was also a place where people lived, then it forces us to completely reconsider how civilization began. For a long time, the dominant belief has been that agriculture came first. Humans began farming and raising animals, which led to permanent settlements and eventually to organized societies with temples, governments, and infrastructure. But what if that timeline is upside down? What if the initial driver of human settlement was the need for communal gathering, whether for ritual, connection, or shared goals, and farming developed later as a way to sustain that lifestyle? Emerging evidence seems to support this reversal, and when you examine the design of Göbekli Tepe itself, the argument becomes even stronger. This wasn't a random pile of stones thrown together by nomads. The structures reflect sophisticated planning. Each ring of pillars appears intentionally positioned, potentially tied to astronomical or seasonal patterns. The use of symmetry and repetition throughout the site is unmistakable. These were not primitive wanderers, they were thoughtful builders with a clear sense of order, space, and meaning. And, what's truly astonishing, is that all of this occurred before the invention of agriculture, before pottery, and before the creation of metal tools. Göbekli Tepe predates the invention of the wheel, the advent of writing, and is far older than the Egyptian pyramids. Despite this, its architecture is monumental. The towering pillars, some exceeding 16 feet in height and weighing several tons, indicate that this was no small undertaking. What's even more astounding is the level of collaboration required for such a construction. To carve, transport, and erect these massive stones, people had to organize efficiently, communicate effectively, assign specific roles, and work together over extended periods. Typically, this kind of social coordination is associated with agricultural societies. However, these individuals were still foragers. No farms, no cities, just people working collectively to solve complex challenges. Recent discoveries, including evidence of food processing, toolmaking, and possibly early animal domestication, are starting to shed more light on this fascinating chapter of human history. Göbekli Tepe may not have been solely a place of worship. It could have been one of the earliest attempts by humans to live together in a community, even if only part-time. Whether they gathered there seasonally or stayed for longer periods, the seeds of settled life were already being planted. And that leads to a profound question. Does this discovery shift the timeline of civilization itself? We're now forced to reconsider. Did humans begin to worship because they lived together, or did they start living together because they wanted to worship? Göbekli Tepe strongly points to the latter, turning the traditional narrative upside down. Once dismissed as an outlier, this site may, in fact, be the crucial piece that connects the dots in our history. It doesn't contradict what we already know about ancient societies. It adds a deeper layer. It suggests that the human desire for connection, shared purpose, and spiritual meaning may have been the true driving force behind everything that followed: the rise of agriculture, the birth of cities, the formation of governments, and the creation of culture. So when we talk about revising history, we're not just adjusting minor details, we're rethinking the very first chapter. And perhaps Göbekli Tepe is that opening line. If this site marks the beginning rather than the exception, then our entire understanding of how civilization began deserves a fresh perspective. At this moment, we are facing a discovery that doesn't just enhance our understanding of ancient history, it completely redefines it. For a long time, we've relied on a straightforward narrative of human progress. Once humans mastered farming, they stopped wandering, settled down, built homes, started families, and gradually developed towns, temples, governments, and everything else that followed. This sequence, known as the Neolithic Revolution, has been the foundation of our historical understanding. But now, Göbekli Tepe is challenging that narrative entirely. Here's the most astonishing revelation. Permanent or semi-permanent communities may have existed before agriculture even became a factor. This completely reverses the traditional story. Rather than farming leading to settlements, it now seems people may have first gathered to build, worship, and connect, and only later turned to farming as a way to sustain this new lifestyle. Take a moment to consider what that means. It implies that the drive to belong, to create, and to be part of something greater than oneself could have outweighed the basic need for food security. What motivated these early humans to carve immense stone pillars, arrange them in circles, and adorn them with intricate art? It wasn't survival, it was purpose, it was unity, it was a belief. Göbekli Tepe, with its monumental stone structures, and intricately carved symbols provides compelling evidence that humans, long before the invention of writing or the wheel, had already developed sophisticated spiritual systems. The meticulous planning evident in the site's construction suggests these were not mere transient visitors. There was purpose, there was leadership, there was an organization. This challenges traditional assumptions and introduces a groundbreaking notion. Hunter-gatherers were not simplistic. They didn't merely exist as scattered, loosely connected groups focused solely on survival. At least some of them might have established social hierarchies, divided responsibilities, and pursued long-term objectives. They likely shared knowledge, coordinated efforts, and cultivated a collective culture robust enough to undertake projects spanning years, possibly even decades. Remarkably, this level of complexity predates the advent of farming, and the builders of Göbekli Tepe demonstrated an understanding of geometric principles in designing the site. Recent research indicates that many of the stone pillars were arranged in precise circles and ovals, demonstrating a fundamental understanding of geometry that was previously not attributed to hunter-gatherers. This level of architectural expertise suggests organized planning, task allocation, and even rudimentary governance. Moreover, there is no concrete evidence of domesticated crops or extensive farming during the primary construction phase of Göbekli Tepe. This challenges traditional assumptions and raises a new possibility. What if the act of gathering and creating communal sacred spaces was the catalyst for the development of farming? Regular gatherings for building or worship might have necessitated a dependable food supply nearby. Hunting and gathering could only support them for so long. It's possible that farming didn't kickstart civilization, but instead developed as a response to the needs of a growing community. In this light, agriculture becomes a consequence, not the cause, of societal complexity. And with that shift in thinking, entirely new questions begin to surface. How did these ancient people manage to feed the laborers who shaped and erected such massive stone pillars? What kind of organizational structure did they have? Were there distinct roles, builders, artists, architects, or spiritual figures? Did they interact or trade with nearby groups? Could they have had an early form of currency? And what kinds of stories or shared beliefs helped unify them? These are not questions typically asked about nomadic hunter-gatherers, yet Göbekli Tepe compels us to ask them. When comparing Göbekli Tepe with other megalithic sites around the world, a captivating pattern begins to surface. Despite being constructed by different cultures, in distinct eras, and within vastly different environments, the similarities are striking. It's as if early humans across continents were driven by a shared instinct to create monumental, sacred, and enduring stone structures. Take Stonehenge, for instance, a site familiar to nearly everyone. Nestled in the English countryside, Stonehenge is a circular arrangement of massive standing stones, dating back to approximately 3,000 years before the Common Era. That's about 6,000 years after Göbekli Tepe. Yet, there's an eerie sense of familiarity between the two. Both feature large circular layouts aligned with astronomical phenomena, served as significant gathering places, and remain shrouded in mystery regarding their construction and purpose. Coincidence? Perhaps. But it also suggests a deeper, widespread tradition of sacred stonework rooted in ancient human history. Consider, too, the temples of Malta, such as Gantija. These limestone structures rank among the oldest freestanding buildings on Earth, with origins dating back to roughly 3,600 years before the Common Era. Similar to Göbekli Tepe, the temples of Malta were constructed long before the widespread use of metal tools. Building them required teamwork, careful planning, and impressive engineering skills for societies often considered primitive. These temples were likely intended for ritualistic or religious activities and display evidence of artistic embellishments. Once again, we see architecture being utilized not for practical purposes like shelter or defense, but for symbolic, spiritual, or possibly social reasons, or perhaps a combination of all three. Now, let's turn to Menorca, a small Mediterranean island. Here, we encounter the taulas, T-shaped stone structures standing in open courtyards, often encircled by smaller stones arranged in a horseshoe shape. Sound familiar? This layout bears a striking resemblance to the enclosures at Göbekli Tepe. Although the towers date back to around 1000 before the Common Era, making them much younger, they indicate that the practice of using massive stones to create sacred or ceremonial spaces endured. It evolved, adapted, and continued to reappear. Could the concepts pioneered at Göbekli Tepe, such as communal sacred spaces, organized communities, symbolic artistry, and early engineering, have influenced other regions over time? Cultures often shape and influence each other through trade, migration, and storytelling. Architecture also plays a significant role in this exchange. Circular structures, stone enclosures, and intricate carvings didn't begin and end with Göbekli Tepe. Similar techniques appear at later sites across the ancient world. Were these creations independent inventions? Possibly. What's fascinating is that these civilizations weren't imitating one another. They couldn't have. They were separated by vast oceans, centuries of time, and entirely distinct worldviews. Yet, the similarities are striking. Across the globe, people with no direct contact were engaging in remarkably similar practices, moving massive stones, shaping spaces, and conveying stories through their architectural designs. It's a universal reflection of something inherently human. So, where does Göbekli Tepe fit into this broader narrative? Imagine civilization as a long-standing conversation spanning thousands of years. Göbekli Tepe represents one of the earliest voices in that dialogue. It wasn't the only voice, nor did it say everything, but it conveyed something profound. Others may have picked up on its themes in their own unique ways, which is where its influence transcends mere symbolism. To summarize, Göbekli Tepe marks a pivotal point where humans began expressing ideas through architecture, whether due to cultural diffusion, shared behaviors, or parallel development. It's about more than just stones. It's about community, belief, identity, and the innate desire to leave a legacy that says, "We were here, and we mattered." Architectural innovation didn't end at Göbekli Tepe. It evolved and transformed, its essence visible in the stone circles of Britain. These aren't mere coincidences, but interconnected chapters of a larger narrative. A story that may have begun with a group of hunter-gatherers on a dusty hill in southeastern Turkey, carving stone pillars that would challenge everything we thought we knew about the origins of civilization. We've reached the end of today's fascinating journey. Thank you for watching. If this video sparked your imagination or made you question the reality around us, don't forget to like and subscribe to the UFO Universe channel. New mysteries await in every episode, from bizarre encounters to mystery stories around the world. Keep your eyes on the stars and your mind open. See you soon.